My name is Amelia, and today we are going to be making a cardboard computer. Now, the purpose of this is to make sure you guys have sort of a demo with the parts we're going to be working with inside a computer. So, we're going to be mocking it up. All you need, here are the materials. A nice cereal box. You can either have one that's normal like this or a double wide that holds 2 bags. Either one will work. And if you don't have a cereal box, any box will do as long as we're working with cardboard. You need a pair of scissors, a pen or a pencil, tape, glue, and of course, our template that you can get off the Code Day website. So if you don't have a printer, this is for you guys to learn. So if you want to just mock things up, pull this up on your computer, see the relative sizes, and then you can cut out as you need to. Alright, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is, you can either do this on the front or the back. You're going to cut off one face of the cardboard box. Just like this. You can go down to the bottom. Don't cut off the bottom, we're just doing the front face. And at any time during this video, if you'd like to pause, please do so. And feel free to pause as much as you'd like. So, what this is going to represent is this is going to be the computer case. That's what holds everything. That's the nice outside that you see. So we're not making a laptop, which is designed to be small and thin. We're actually making something called a tower computer, which sits big and bulky on your desk, and it's a big rectangle that holds everything. This is going to represent our tower computer. So, once you have that cut, snip it off at the bottom, and we're ready to get going. There we go. Notice how I left the bottom intact, and what we're going to do, just to make this strong, see how this top flap is open here, we're just going to tape this together, just to make it look nice, and we're going to use this top portion later. So however you want to tape it together, tape, and tape. Perfect, we're going to set this aside. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this out around the edges. Don't cut out each individual part yet. And we're going to glue that down to the surface of the cardboard that we cut out earlier. You can do it on either side, but I suggest doing it on this side so that things are clearer. And there we go. One thing that you want to do with this is make sure you glue the entire back of the paper, because once we cut it out, you want to make sure every piece sticks to the cardboard. And also make sure that it's within the boundaries of your cardboard, just so things look nicer and we get all those pieces out. So, glue is done. The next thing we're going to do is cut out all of these pieces. Only follow along the solid lines, everything in the motherboard section right here. Don't cut that out. So you're just going to do one big square here and everything else by the outlines. Here we go. Okay, so now that we have all our pieces cut out, we're going to start assembling the motherboard first. That's the biggest square. You can set everything else aside. And what we're going to do first is we are going to attach our RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory. And what that does is it stores information temporarily for the computer to make calculations based off of that. We're going to attach those, the Wi-Fi card, which connects your computer to Wi-Fi, the graphics processing unit, which is called the GPU, and that is in charge of all the images that come up on your screen. We'll talk more about that later, and the central processing unit, called the CPU, and that's what's actually doing the calculations in the math. So go ahead and take all of those pieces out of your pile and gather them so we're ready to go. CPU looks like this. We've got 2 random access memory storages, RAM, and then we're also looking for Wi-Fi and graphics. Set that aside. What we're going to do is we're actually going to cut into the cardboard down from the top to the bottom of these boxes. Same for these ones, in from the side though. And I'll show you what it looks like at the end here. Okay, so you can see I put my scissors all the way down to the end of the box. I'm going to do the same thing for the other RAM connector. Down to the end. You can go a little farther. And in from the side for the other 2. There we go. So it should look like this. 2 flaps here, 2 flaps here. And what you're going to do is you're going to put these into the slots. I suggest facing them up. The motherboard is going to sit like this, so I suggest facing your pieces up so you can read the text on them. You can put them in any way you like. And as you go, you're going to use tape to secure them. So once it's in the slot, you're going to attach tape to the piece and stick it to the motherboard. And that's just going to keep it there and also keep it straight so you can see it. So that's graphics, we're going to do Wi-Fi, and the other 2 accordingly. Okay, there we go. The last thing we're going to put on is the central processing unit, CPU. And what you're going to do, take a piece of tape, roll it up so that everything on the outside is sticky, attach it to the back, and then we're actually going to attach it to something called the CPU chipset. And all it is a setting place for your CPU chip. So we're going to put that right over top, and that symbolizes connecting the CPU, the central processing unit, to the motherboard. That's connecting it to the heart of the computer. So the first thing we're going to do is place the motherboard in our case. Now normally if the case is standing up like this, and this is the front that you normally see, so the power button is going to be up here, and this is the back facing some sort of wall, then the motherboard normally sits right up here in the upper left corner, where it can actually be accessed through ports in the back, and we'll do that later. But you're going to take a roll of tape and place it in the upper left-hand corner of your computer case. Now, the rest of these pieces, all they do is stick onto the back, so we're not going to do any more of these 3D pieces. So, the rest, I'm just going to show you where these pieces would go in the case. So the next thing we're going to put is the power supply unit, or PSU. And that's in charge of taking power from the wall outlet that you plug your computer into and giving it to the motherboard, and also giving it to the other components in your computer. Normally, the power supply unit goes in the bottom left, and that's because the power cord will come out of the bottom. Next up, let's do the CD and DVD drive. This is actually optional, and some computers may not have them. So, this is pretty much as you would expect. You put in the CD, it will play the CD or DVD, and then you can watch movies, you can watch, play games, or listen to music. Normally this goes in the upper right of the computer, because if this is the front, then you can put your CDs into the front, just like that. Next up, let's go into memory. So, I've got a hard drive, which stores information like it's on a CD, almost, and a solid state drive. And this is more like a USB thumb drive that will hold the information in a more compact way, and it's also much, much faster, because this stores data using magnetism on a CD, and this stores data using electricity, like how your computer normally operates with switches. This has lots and lots of different electronic ways of storing information. So this is much faster, but it's also more expensive. Both of these can be in your computer at the same time, or either or. It's up to you. We're going to represent having both in our computer. You can also have multiple hard drives and multiple solid state drives. It all depends on what you want in your computer. So, put some tape on the back of both of these. And we're going to put it in the bottom right. Doesn't matter the order, up or down, whichever is over top the other. Hard drive can go down here. Solid state drive can go above. They're just generally in that area. Awesome. Next up, and one of the last components in here, are the fans. Air movement is extremely important in a computer because not only does the central processing unit gets hot, but all of the other components do as well. And so in order to make have your computer not overheat, you need to have air moving through the entire system. So there's a back fan and a front fan, and you can have multiple fans. So my computer that I'm building has 3 in the front, none in the back. You can have 2 in the front, 1 in the back. Generally, you should have about 3 fans in your computer. For laptop, it's different. They have fans down in the base of your computer and normally eject that air out the back, towards the bottom. So tape on the back of front fan you can stick it anywhere on the front just to symbolize that it's there. Same for the back fan, but normally it goes between the motherboard and the power supply unit, because that's just how space works out. So you can stick that to the back. The last thing we're doing for the inside is the CPU cooler, Central Processing Unit cooler. And what this does, I mentioned earlier that the CPU gets really, really hot when it does calculations. That's because electrons are moving around. So this guy is in charge of making sure that Central Processing Unit that's sitting on the motherboard stays nice and cool, so that nothing gets damaged when it overheats. So this actually fits right over top the CPU, so we're going to bend the edges, and then we're going to tape it over the Central Processing Unit. So put tape on both sides of those bended parts, and stick it over the Central Processing Unit. This part is a little bit tricky. The goal for this is to be able to lift up the Central Processing Unit cooler and to be able to see the CPU underneath. That's the inside. The last final steps that we're going to put on this for detail are the on-off button, and that is going to go, that's what you interact with. That's on the front, on the top of your computer, and that is telling you, okay, turn on my computer, give it power. And that goes right on the top of the front, just like that. The other power switch is called the Power Supply Unit Master Power Switch, and this goes on the bottom of the back of your computer. So right down here, and what that does, it's a switch between the power from your outlet and the power supply unit. So if you ever really need to turn off, completely make sure that there's no power going to your computer, you flip this guy. It's different from the power switch that you normally use. This guy is used for a complete hard shutoff. Now, there's only one thing left to do, and that is called the input-output board. And that goes on the back of your computer towards the top, and it's actually a part of the motherboard. Your motherboard comes with this, and it sticks out the back of your case. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off. You can leave it on if you'd like, but just to symbolize that it's really attached to the motherboard, I like to go ahead and cut it off. And what the input-output board does is it takes in things like your monitor that needs to hook up to your computer, a mouse, maybe a keyboard, and it connects those to the motherboard. And it also can output things. So if you want to plug in some headphones, maybe you've got a phone that you want to hook up through USB, it's going to go through this port as well. Now the reason we don't have something for the I/O board, as we call it, input-output board, on the template that it was given, because every motherboard has a different one. They all come with different connections, different numbers of connections. So what we're going to do is you're just going to draw in connections of your own out of this section. So you can draw a few squares, maybe a triangle, circle. And this is just to convince you, to show yourself that there are different things that you can plug into your computer. It's not all the same. So for example, you could have lots of different USBs, you can have an HDMI which hooks up a monitor, and you can have also Ethernet, which physically connects you to the internet through a wire. And so just make some different shapes, star, triangle, and you'll see an example of this board later on in the presentation. Okay, so now that we have the I/O panel in the back, and we have our on-off switch in the front, PSU, Power Supply Unit, Master Power Switch in the back, our computer is complete. So if you'd like, you can go ahead, it doesn't really stand up on its own when everything is attached on there, so you can tape it down to the table and keep this for reference. So this is yours now. You have completed your computer demo, and you can use this for reference in the coming presentation.